Hey everyone, Clint Brown here with the BAM Institute, and I thought I would take a moment to go over our curriculum architecture for 2021. Really, it started with this initial question, which is how in the world did we begin the journey of learning about whole systems? Most learning systems, if not all learning systems by default, are reductionist, right? We're taking a large body of knowledge and trying to boil it down to a book or books or a PowerPoint or a presentation or a semester in the hopes that it illuminates back to something more complex. And so we live in that tension here in the Institute between the need to make it something we can transfer, an idea we can transfer, and with the hopes that that simple idea transferred allows you the opportunity to see something far more complex than the item that we're using to teach you. After our first semester of effort, our first module, we decided that we really needed to scale the project to the fellow. And so our idea is that maybe we should start with understanding the system of you. One of the first areas that was illuminated for us was this concept of 8 dimensions of wellness. This is something used by the mental health profession, and we're adapting it for our system, but it's used to allow somebody to evaluate their self on 8 areas of wellness. Each of these have standalone elements. They are also interdependent, and if evaluated, all the areas give a pretty good sense of the overall wellness of an individual. And so this is the SAMHSA model here. And our question was, what if you take this sense of wellness of self, and over 8 modules, you scale it to 8 different scales, starting with the person, and then the next larger group size based on the practice of group dynamics and acoustics is a household of 5 people, then a group of 15 people, which we like to call your oikos, then your band, which is 35 people, your community, which is 150, your neighborhood, which is 500, a village is 1,500, and then 5,000 people or larger in a town. So could we understand the wellness of a system at all different scales? You see things like this represented in something called Dunbar's number, which is, how we manage relationships. And basically what you'll find is that relationships and the dynamics of those relationships change at different scales. We're also impacted by the integral study of human development. So this is a chart you can find online that's parts of the ways that they break this down. But basically, as humans develop over time throughout their life, they inadvertently or often end up in areas of different senses of self. And so this additionally influenced our curriculum architecture. And then that graphic in the lower right is the original architecture we had around the module on our first version, which was we had a project and competencies surrounding that. And we combined all of those for a new sense, which is this 8-lobed flower. And we're going to use this to sort of be our game board and make sense of the BAM Institute's architecture. So you'll see here what we've done is just map module 1 to that center circle, and module 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out to the various levels of that flower. So let's start with module 1. That's where you'd be starting this year. And here it is in the middle of that circle. And if we zoom in on that, there's you. And then we're going to use the 8 dimensions of wellness to sort of dissect that up into 8 areas of gameplay or 8 areas of learning. And so right out of the gates this summer, during June and July, you'll spend 8 weeks taking sort of a tour of these 8 areas. This will be a high-level tour, a few hours spent each week understanding the concepts. That way we have a common vocabulary. After you graduate from that 8 weeks, we'll have a second tour, which is 22 weeks. It's a lot deeper dive. where we will look at the individual elements in much more depth and give you a chance to really get your hands dirty with them. If we were to zoom in on one element, inside of that there's competencies or skills. There'll be 3 in each one. You could choose one or more of the skills to acquire during your time in that area. Again, like a video game, if you went to that room and there's a treasure chest, you could open it up and improve the skills of your player. Same sort of thing here. There will also be an excursion in the fall for you to attend, where you will have the opportunity to play with these concepts in sort of a messy fashion, just via conversation of the other people on the excursion. Additionally, we're going to give you the opportunity to do a project this fall to tie all these concepts together. All said and done, a module is about 320 hours of time. In these 2 loops, you have about 160 hours of study allocated. It doesn't mean it'll take you 160 hours, but you have 160 hours allocated. You have an 80-hour excursion, and then you have an 80-hour project. All said and done, that's about 320 hours, which in the college world, that's about 8 credits. Module 2, just as an example, we'll do a similar thing. It builds on Module 1, and you'll have a tour through the concepts. In Module 2, you'll also have an excursion, and you'll have a project. If you combine those 2 together, you really get a sense of what 2 semesters might look like, or 2 modules in our world. And it's quite a bit different than a traditional college sense. If your college experience was like mine, you had concurrent linear studies. I had calculus at the same time that I had Western Civ, and I don't know where those were headed, and they certainly were not tied together. And we hope to interlink these things because the systems that our fellows will find themselves in the practice of civic biodesign are interdependent and somewhat messy systems. If you were to just Google system design or system mapping to have a sense of what that world looks like for complex systems, you'll find things like this: a map for tracking obesity, or maybe this one to help understand the stocks and flows and feedback loops of fishery systems, or of a local community food system, or of river management. The real systems in the world are messy. They are not straight lines through. So Module 3 will build on Module 2, and you get the sense each time you sort of keep these 8 dimensions, and we just scale the project as we go through, and it grows and grows. Your flower gets larger and larger until your capstone project hopefully will give you the opportunity to use all these skills that you've acquired at each dimension in each module. By this time, you'll have 50 or 60 skills that you could use to deploy your final project. Maybe 60 or 70 skills or more. And have a project that sort of runs through and ties this all together nicely. All said and done, you're going to end up with 8 certifications: Civic Biodesign Level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You'll have done 8 projects at 8 skills. You'll have 64 plus deployable skills. These will be actual skills. We will be issuing badges for these skills, sort of like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. And something you could tell a future employer, I know how to do this. Not that you've read it or you saw a PowerPoint presentation on it. Something you have actually done. You have about 2,500 hours of study. Certainly probably read 50 books or more, and have done projects in 4 different communities. Hopefully this gives you some clarity as to what the structure overall of the BAM Institute looks like. And I encourage you to read the information on the rest of this page to answer additional questions. Thank you.